Hi, welcome back to Military Brats podcast.
We're your host. I'm Chloe.
And I'm Juliana. Today we are joined by my sister, Aliana, who is a fellow military brat and active duty service member in the Air Force. So let's welcome her in.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're good. We're happy you're joining us.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Of course, we would want you on. You have so much to share, but before we kind of jump into that, do you want to go ahead and give yourself a short and sweet introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Aliana. I'm Juliana's older sister. I'm 24 and I am active duty in the Air Force. Currently stationed in San Antonio, and I will be in the Air Force for almost 6 years now on Tuesday, the 17th.
Woo woo. Oh my god, where has the time gone?
I know.
Crazy.
Can't believe 6 years. That is actually really crazy. Holy cow. Let's go ahead and talk about our childhood and give some background for our new listeners. I guess we could start with the divorce, I say.
The divorce.
The divorce. For me personally, I felt like you and I had very different opinions on the divorce, I should say. Like, I felt like I was very upset about it, I guess. I don't know. How did you feel about the divorce, and how do you think that impacted you?
So you're right in that sense. I feel like you were closer to our father, and our dad, and I feel like the topic of him and like the divorce, you were a lot more sensitive to. As for me, I don't think I was as close to our dad, and so it didn't really like affect me too much. And I guess I kind of just started to get used to it as we like got older.
How would you say the transition for you from like our biological dad to like meeting our stepdad? How was that transition?
Honestly, it was something like new to get used to for sure, because this was like a new person and like a stranger to us specifically, maybe not to mom, but for he was new to our lives and to us and to like our family. And I just honestly wanted like mom to be like happy at the end of the day because she was on her own with us for a while. So just as long as she was happy, I guess that really matters. And if he was like accepting to be our father and I don't know, to love and care for us just like he did with mom, then I guess that's kind of all that really mattered.
Well, I think that's a good way to look at it.
Once like our stepdad Brian was kind of introduced into our lives and we had that whole transition, we moved to South Carolina. Do you have any memorable events from South Carolina?
Um, it was definitely interesting. I feel like that was our first time living in the South on like the South Coast as a family. And I do remember going to like middle school there, and like our family had a little house, and it was a new experience for us. And Brian was a drill instructor at Paris Island at the time, and I have vivid memories of him like rehearsing his speech like over and over in the mirror like while he was getting ready, the speech that they say to their recruits, and him like being on duty all the time, and like us going with mom to bring him dinner and stuff. So yeah, it was a wild time, and I feel like it definitely kind of influenced my decision like further down the road, just from like witnessing that journey that he went through at that time.
How do you think growing up in the military did shape your like early years and teenage years?
I think it was good for me to have it be like such a big part of my life. Overall, I guess it just opened up me to experience like a lot, but also at the same time, I do feel like we were sheltered from a few things as well. But I do feel like I was taught some good like values to have, and it helped me grow up faster and to be a better, not only adult, but like human being in general.
We're taught a lot of skills, but we also like lived in a bubble. That's what I always say too.
Yeah.
I feel like coming to college was like the first time I was like, oh my god, this is what the world's like.
It's definitely like a culture shock when you're just like out in the world on your own and you're not surrounded by like the military or living on a base anymore. It's completely different.
I know, I feel like South Carolina was kind of our first real exposure to the military. Like, I felt like we kind of it wasn't like a real transition, it was kind of like we were just dropped in the deep end with it, because, like my sister was saying, like, we really did, like I do remember, like, my dad, like, rehearsing his, like, speeches, like, when he was, like, in the shower, and he would even, like, say it to, like, me and my sister, like, it would be, like, me, my mom, and my sister, and he would, like, rehearse it, like, in front of us, be like, "Was that good?" And we were like, "Yeah, that was really good. Like, nice job." And then, like, I just remember also seeing him, like, in the drill field and things like that, and, like, doing his little routine with his recruits and, like, I don't know what that's called, but, like, do you know what I'm talking about, Chloe? Okay,
Well,
well,
like they're marching.
yeah, it was them, like, yeah,
They're
marching pretty much, and they would and then my dad was, like, the person to, like, yell the directions
like
at
in the
all the
movies.
recruits. Yeah, like, just like in the
Like
movies, like, we would see that, like, all the
it's
time.
like left, right,
Um
left, like that guy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I felt like me and my sister and my mom, we had to attend those all of the time, like, that was, like, what we would do, like, on the weekends.
I distinctly remember him like coming home sometimes and like losing his voice from like all the yelling and stuff and like it was also hard for him to like turn off that drill instructor mode, and so a lot of the times like mom would have to remind him like, hey, these are your kids, these are your daughters, they're not your recruits. Yeah.
No, that's
I
a big thing
know.
we keep talking about is like the identity crisis, especially even like coming home. It's the same thing for my dad too. It's like
Yeah.
he forgets that like
Yeah.
we aren't in the military. We are your children.
Well, just thinking about all of the different places that we have lived, what would you say your favorite duty station was?
I would say my favorite had to be Camp Pendleton or Oceanside. That's also where I feel like we spent the most time, and that's where we honestly like grew up from being like teenagers like into adults.
I agree, that was definitely my favorite as well. But thinking about, like, how often we did move and things like that, do you think it really affected any of your friendships, either short term or long term?
I would say like short term for sure, but I will say that we were very lucky to not have to move as much as like other families. We were very lucky to at least have stayed in the duty stations for at least like 3 to 4 years, instead of moving like every 1 to 2. But I will say that it was hard having to leave some friendships behind and having to be the new kid and making new friends.
How was that for you? Because I know you and I are, like, kind of opposites, like, I'm much more extroverted than you, and you're so much more introverted, so how was making those friends and making those friendships when you were the new student? How was that for you?
I think it was a little bit harder for me because of like my introverted side. But I think once I truly felt like comfortable and like I was able to trust the people that I was around, then I started to like open up and like show a little bit more of like my personality. I think when I was like younger, it was really coming out more as like shyness. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that I am, like you said, just more introverted. And I think it's less shyness and just more like me feeling comfortable and like trusting people.
Thinking about moving from Oceanside to 29 Palms, was that especially hard for you since you moved right before your senior year? Like, for me, I knew that it was hard for me, but I, like, moved at, like, a movable time, like, I was only gonna be a sophomore, that's okay, I still had, like, 3 years to make my friends in 29 Palms, but for you, you've already been at Oceanside for those 3 years, you only had 1 year left. How did that impact you?
It was hard. I was kind of devastated at first, and I had been so prepared that I was going to graduate from Oceanside and I was going to be there for my senior year. So I was a little devastated and sad that like we did have to move my senior year and my expectations like weren't going to be met, and I was going to be in a whole new school, my last year of high school, and graduating and like from this little like town and school and like in the middle of nowhere and having to make like new friends and stuff. So it was definitely hard for sure. I know Brian, our dad, did try everything to keep us there, especially for me, but I guess it just wasn't an option at the end of the day.
You know, that sounds, like, really hard, like, I don't know if I could have been able to do it. Since you graduated from 29 Palms, did you feel like there was a lot of pressure on you from our parents to make sure that you had a plan once you graduated high school?
So I did. And honestly, I feel like that I didn't really have that very many options, but I also will take accountability and admit that I didn't really properly like set myself up for success. And when I say that, I mean when I was applying for colleges, I really only applied to like UCs in California, which are hard to get into, and like the University of Washington, and I didn't end up getting into any of those schools. But I definitely should have applied to other schools that were like easier to get into, and like should have applied for like scholarships and like stuff like that. And I feel like our parents really didn't really give me very many options. They're like, okay, like you are going to college or you're getting a part-time job. Like there's kind of like no ifs, ands, or buts. Like those were kind of the options I had. I didn't get accepted into any of the schools I wanted to go to, so they were like, okay, well, you're not just gonna sit around at home like a bump on the log. I distinctly remember being told that.
I know. I feel like we always reference the bump on a log because I can't believe my mom actually said that. Like, who says something like that? How do you think that impacted your decision going into the military?
So I guess after I found out that I didn't get into any of the schools I wanted to go to, and I didn't, the idea of going to community college didn't really sound appealing to me at the time. I kind of thought like, okay, well, I know the military offers like tuition assistance and stuff, and so why don't I join the military and have them pay for my schooling? That was kind of my mindset there.
Do you think our parents were like really happy about that decision? Do you think they were kind of worried?
So I know mom was worried for sure, and she does try to tell me, even to this day, like, I didn't want you to join the military and all this stuff. And I'm like, that's not very true, mom. Like, you were kind of pushing me towards that direction. If you didn't want me to join, you would have tried harder and you would have stopped stopped me. But Brian, our dad, he seemed like pretty happy with whatever I wanted.
Want to elaborate on how that process was for you? Like, how did you pick the branch that you wanted to go into? How did Brian, our dad, kind of help you through that?
The summer after I graduated up in Washington, for the last few months, I had started talking to a recruiter for the Air Force at that time. But I didn't want to start like making moves until I was actually 18, just in case our biological father decided to stop me and didn't approve of me joining the military. Um, Once I turned 18, I automatically just thought of Army, Marines, Air Force, and Navy. Army, it was not appealing to me at all. And then Brian, our dad, even said, like, no, you are not allowed to join the Army. And I was like, okay, so that leaves me with the Marine Corps and the Air Force and the Navy. Um, and sorry to burst Brian, our dad's bubble, but I was not going to join the Marines. I had experienced too much of his like lifestyle. So the Air Force and the Navy kind of ended up being my two options. And I would say for a while I was toying with joining the Navy, but what kind of ended up being like the final solidifying factor is we actually toured like a ship. Like, it might have been like the USS Midway or something like that, the one that's in San Diego. And I just could not imagine myself like going up and down ladders and stuff because I'm clumsy and like being like stuck on a boat and stuff. So I was like, I don't think I could do this. Like this branch isn't for me. And so that left me with the Air Force, and I kind of never looked back after I made that decision. During my recruiting process, you're right, Brian, our dad, was pretty much with me like every step of the way. And it's funny because he was actually taking my like paperwork and like seeing what I was applying for, or like what I was eligible to apply for in the Marine Corps. And I was like, sorry to break it to you, but it's not happening.
Yeah. Do you think
Mhm.
this changed your like relationship with Brian?
Um, I don't honestly think so, actually. I feel like me and him have actually always been closer. But I do think it is pretty cool that he is still active duty. It makes me like pretty happy and like cool that like I'm actually able to like say that and do that. So I do like that I do have someone who has been in the military and like still is in the military actively, who I know I can turn to for advice or if I'm feeling like some type of way.
Thinking about the day that you enlisted, do you remember like the whole day, like when you were in the room when you had to like do your pledge and then you were shipped off on the bus? Because I remember that day. Like I remember sending you off on the bus because it was so unexpected, right? Do you want to kind of go
It,
into that a little bit more?
I was supposed to first leave for basic training or boot camp. In the Air Force, it's called basic training. It's a little different. I know it's weird. But I was originally supposed to leave basic training in December of 2017. However, and I was supposed to actually go in with a different job. I was supposed to have like a maintenance job, basically. I was supposed to be like a little mechanic working on the flight line. Which I probably would have hated my life for, and I probably would still not be in the military to this day if I did end up going through with that job. But in October, I was doing like a normal like check in with my recruiter, and at the time he had asked me, he was like, "Hey, there's a girl here who can't switch or who can't ship out. There's a problem like with her paperwork. Like, do you want to take her spot?" And at first, I had told him no. I was like, "No, like it's too soon. Like I'm scared. Why would I do that?" And then after I got off the phone, like I told my parents about it, and they were kind of just like, "Well, I mean, you'll have to leave eventually. Like this might be a blessing in disguise for you, and you might be able to have like a different job. And so you've been preparing to leave. Like, why don't you try just like taking her spot and like leaving now?" So I ended up calling my recruiter, and I was able to take her spot. And she was not going to come into the Air Force with a job already assigned to her. She was going to have what was called like open general, and so basically like she was going to come in and she was supposed to like pick her own job. So I ended up taking her spot, and I'm pretty sure I left within like a matter of like 2 days for basic training. And I ended up leaving in October of 2017 still instead of December. I left like immediately. It was very it was very shocking, and I did not expect to leave like that soon. But
I didn't even know that. That is crazy. Like, I can't even imagine. Because if you're preparing for it, it's different preparing for it than actually doing it, like, the next
mhm.
day.
Yeah, it was crazy. We like as a family, I distinctly remember during that year, like we had gone to a cute little pumpkin patch and like we were taking pictures and stuff. And then like the next day I had left to go to basic training, which was crazy. That was the last memory I had like before like I joined the military. But as far as the day that like I actually left for MEPS and like basic training and stuff, I do remember going through MEPS and like the people there were a little mean. But they really had to make sure like we were good and like eligible to join the military. I do remember being like I swore in and said like my oath and stuff and held like my right hand up. And I remember you guys were actually there, and actually have like the little Polaroid of that day, like that picture that we took like at my desk at work. And so I keep it up there. But shortly after that, I do remember getting like or you guys walking me like to the bus, and I definitely cried when like I was on the like bus ride to the airport and stuff.
I'm pretty sure I cried too. Like I didn't think that I was gonna cry, honestly. But then like as soon as like you got on the bus and like the bus started driving away, I like remember my eyes started watering and I just like look over and I see mom is crying and then Dominic is kind of just like running around because he was so small and I was just like, oh my god, now I'm just stuck with them. Like now it's just me with them. I was like, she left me in the dust. Like, oh my god.
But I mean, yeah, it's really crazy because I feel like for me and you, we pretty much like there was never a day where we were really like apart for like that long. And so I could probably understand and like see why like you did get emotional because this was the first
Mhm.
time like we would actually be separated for the longest time like
Yeah.
ever.
Did you ever have any thoughts like, "I'm not ready for this, I wanna go back, like, take me out?"
Um I don't think so. I think I was just kind of more nervous about like actually like getting there and like not knowing what to expect.
Yeah. What was boot camp like for you though?
It was a little difficult to me, like or for me. Brian, our dad, likes to make fun of me and says that like our boot camp is like summer camp basically. But for me, it was a struggle because Um, it took me forever to learn how to like march and stuff. I'm like short and like they usually like size our flights or platoons by like height, and so I was always in the back and I have shorter legs than everybody else, and so it would like it took me such a long time to like learn how to like march and like keep up with everyone. And my drill movements were also never great either. I had never done any type of drill movements like that in my life, or so I struggled with that as well. And I definitely got yelled at and like more like attention drawn on me than I would have liked. I definitely would have liked to fly under the radar, but that didn't happen.
Did you write any letters to anybody?
So I do remember like when we first got to basic training and we first got settled in, we are allowed like one phone call to call home and to like let our families know that we had made it there safely, and we'll be calling them in a few weeks or whenever the next time we got our phone call was. And I think at that time like I definitely like I think it was like I had like a lump in my throat, and I was definitely like sad and like crying on like that phone call, that
Oh.
first phone call that I made back home. Yeah, and I think I also was just like a little scared. I was like, oh no, like what if they don't like answer anything, and they
Oh.
don't even know that like I made it or anything.
That's so
um,
sad. Oh my gosh.
I don't know. It was just always like a little fear I had in the back of my mind because like I am in like this different setting in this whole different environment, but the world is continuing to go around me. Like I'm like
Mhm.
isolated and things are still happening outside of this environment. And so I didn't know like what you guys were doing or what you're up to or if I was like interrupting important things or what. And so I definitely enjoyed like writing you guys letters. I know I wrote like our parents letters and like some of our like close family friends and like Nana, our grandma and stuff, and like our aunts and uncles and like cousins. So I enjoy like writing those letters, like a nice, like comforting feeling to like receive letters from you guys and like know that you guys have written back. It kind of helped. It definitely helped me through like to get through those like weeks of training so I didn't feel like I was alone.
Do you think growing up in the military prepared you for joining the military? Or like being in the military?
I feel like in some ways it did. But I feel like now that I'm actually like in the military and like joining and stuff, I definitely had to grow up a lot faster than I would have liked to. But it was nice kind of already kind of coming in and already having that prior experience of being a military brat and like being around the military lifestyle. So I wasn't like completely like clueless. So I did feel like a little bit prepared like in that aspect, and just knowing that like it wasn't going to be easy and that like I was going to get yelled at or get in trouble for doing like simple things. And I would say that it definitely was helpful growing up in the military and like around like the military to where I am now.
So can you give us some insight on your job? What do you do?
So I do have a medical job. I'm a mental health technician, and essentially I work with psychologists, social workers, and psychiatrists. So therapy and or therapists and like doctors that prescribe medication. I'm pretty much like what we're called like paraprofessionals or like provider extenders, and I pretty much help see patients who come in for like mental health issues. And we assist the providers in getting them established with treatment and like getting the care that they need. And I do work in a hospital, and I am pretty lucky to have like a relatively like 9 to 5 job technically. Those aren't the exact hours, but it's normally from like 7:30 to 4:30, and I do have like the weekends off, so I have a pretty cushy like lifestyle and job in terms of being in the Air Force.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally different from the original job that you were supposed to get being a mechanic. Like, so I'm sure you're happy that you chose to take that other girl's spot.
I don't think I would still be in the Air Force if I did have that job. Like, I definitely don't mind getting my hands dirty, but I feel like I would have to work outside in a way harsher conditions and stuff, and I would not have survived.
And I feel like your job could probably or could translate to the civilian life pretty easily. Have you ever thought about doing that maybe once you get out or if you are planning on getting out?
Oh, I do have 2 years left of like my second contract. So I have been starting to think about like what my options are and what I wanted, the things that I want and need to do before I make my decision. And I have been considering just like separating entirely, or maybe joining like the reserves and staying in the military with some of those benefits, just not being active duty like full time. And then there is an option that I just learned where I could be active duty part time essentially. And they give me, yeah, I guess this program like just started because I didn't know it existed. But essentially, I still get the same benefits. I'm still active duty, but they help give me some time to make more of a decision on whether I want to get out or re-enlist again or join the reserve. So I may look into that option as well once we get like closer.
Do you know if the part-time active duty is just for the Air Force or is that kind of going to be all branches?
That is a good question. As far as I know, it's only for the Air Force, but if it is an option for other branches, I feel like that's something that everyone should look into if you are like an active duty service member.
Do you have any pros or cons about being in the military?
Sometimes I really have to like step back and take myself out of the bigger picture and like just think of like the little things that I do have and things that I should be grateful for. So, um, some pros definitely. I have health insurance. I do have tuition assistance, so I could go to school at the same time and like have the military pay for school. I do get 2.5 days of leave every month, and if I am not at work, like I still get paid. I'm very lucky to have a stable paycheck, especially when we went through like a pandemic and I didn't get fired from my job or anything like that. I know that was really hard, and so I sometimes I really have to like in order to like motivate myself and kind of recenter myself and figure out like, oh, this is why I'm doing it, this is what I'm doing it for. I really have to like run through like that list all the time. As far as the cons though, um, I guess it can be kind of taxing on your body physically and like mentally. And um, I don't know. Sometimes some days are just like harder than others, and I'm just like, ugh, like, like I don't know, like how much longer like I could do this, or um, how much more like I could take, because I feel like my job is not like physically strenuous at all. It's just kind of like more mentally and like emotionally strenuous, and it can be a lot, especially to take home. Um, and so I've definitely had to like s- set some boundaries with myself and like just figure out how to like cope with that and like actually like decompress like when I get home. And I also do something else to mention is I do work at the largest mental health clinic in the Air Force. So there's always, yeah, it's crazy. So there's always a lot of like moving parts and a lot of people coming and going. Because I am stationed at Lackland Air Force Base, which is the training base, which is a training base and the only base in the Air Force that has basic training. So there's just always a lot of like chaos, I feel like, and it's something you have to get used to. But I will say, like, I don't mind being stationed in San Antonio. I am very lucky to be stationed in a city with a lot to do, and I have grown to like San Antonio because just being stationed or just being like in like 29 Palms and like duty stations like that, I am very well aware that it could be worse and I could be stationed in the middle of nowhere. So that I'm grateful for. But being stationed at like Lackland and like at such a big base kind of gets old, and sometimes I don't love that. But overall, I think I'm happy with my decision. In my life right now.
Thank you for sharing that. What advice would you give a military brat wanting to join the military?
I would say use your connections and reach out to people that you do know that are currently serving or that have served before, and just get as much like advice and information as possible. Like do your research, because even though I have been in for almost 6 years now, things are changing like every day. Even like just the processes like that people have to go through to join and stuff. A lot of information is coming out and changing every day. So just use those connections and just do as much research and information as possible. But overall, I feel like it's a good stepping stone and a good opportunity. And it may not be what you expected or like when you first join and when you first sign up, but it's I feel like it's a good opportunity and it's helped me to grow as an individual and like a person and to help me become like a better like young adult overall. So I would say from a one former like fellow military brat to another, like if I can do it, you can.
Oh, I love
And
that.
yeah, and I encourage you to. If that's truly like what your heart desires and you should do it, you can do it.
That's really good advice to give
That
military
is.
brats from somebody
Hmm.
that was a military brat and then went into service, because everyone has different experiences and it sounds like you had a fairly
Hmm.
positive one. So that's very
I
insightful.
have, yeah. I've been really lucky to have such a positive one. There have been like bumps and like hiccups along the way, but overall, I think if I would have had to make the decision to do it all over again, I think I still would have done it and made the same decision. Yeah.
Well, I'm happy you feel that way.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Aliana, for sharing your insights and your incredible story. It was amazing having you on.
Thank you guys for having me. I had a great time, and yeah, anytime you guys want me back on, I would love to be back on.
Have a great
Bye.
rest of your day. We'll see you
You
later.
too. All right, bye. Love you guys.
Love you.
Bye.
Well, with that being said, we hope you guys liked today's episode.
And don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts so you can tune into every episode that we post. And as always, if you have any specific topics or any questions that you want us to answer, be sure to DM us on Instagram at Military Brats Podcast. Thanks so much.
See you next Wednesday. Bye.